Hello, I am Dr. Felice Gersh. I am your integrative physician. I'm speaking to you from my house. I'm actually in one of my kids' bedrooms in California, in Orange County. And I am putting out this special edition of my Instagram Live series because I want to do an update of what's going on with this virus. So, just to give you an overview, yesterday it came out that we hit the 100,000 death mark for this virus worldwide. 100,000 people. I thought that called for a little special attention. So, what have we learned and what do we have to offer? Well, I would say the biggest take home lesson for me from what has come about with this virus is that the state of your health is not a little issue. It is a massive issue in what will happen should you get infected with this virus. That's why I'm putting out this plea right out the gate to everyone who is listening and to share this with everyone you know, whether you are an acquaintance, a family member, everyone. This should go viral. Every person's underlying physiological state is what is actually determining the outcome more than anything else. Now, I'm hoping there will be an ultimate amazing treatment or cure, and I'm going to go over what is actually out there right now. But this is really foundational, fundamental. A little bit different data in different hospitals, but at least this is the majority. About 90% of the people who are dying from COVID-19 have a significant underlying medical problem. Now, there are some things we cannot change. For example, our age. People who are 65 and over statistically have a 2 to 3-fold greater chance of dying than the average younger person. Now, part of that overlaps with underlying medical conditions. Some of it, well, I can explore a little bit that with you, what my theory is about aging. But keep this in mind. For people under the age of 65, 90% of the people who do really, really poorly have some significant underlying medical condition. They're talking about cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, hypertension. So, if you're hearing this, it is not too late for you to lower your risk of an adverse outcome should you get infected, no matter how careful you are, no matter how many times you wash your hands or wear now masks going out, which we have been doing in my home and in my practice for weeks already. But taking all the precautions you can, social distancing, the works, you still could get infected, no matter how careful you are. It is possible. So if that happens, I want you to have a very healthy, what we call terrain, that your underlying physiological processes in your body, your immune system, your ability to make energy, your mitochondrial function, hormones, everything is optimally functioning. So you're equipped with what you need to fight off this virus. We know that many, many people are coming through with infections with no sequela. Why is that? What differentiates those who have a terrible outcome, death, and those who have no symptoms or minimal symptoms? It seems to be their underlying physiological status. So, what can you do to be healthy right now? Number one, eat a lot of vegetables. Okay, there's magic in those vegetables. There's polyphenols, there's antioxidants. Eat across the color of the rainbow. Eat fruit. I have a motto, do not be afraid of fruit. Some people think eating fruit is like eating a candy bar. I can assure you they are light years apart. Eat 3 fruit a day. Try to go for 9 cups of vegetables of different types every day. And don't think root vegetables are evil. They have starch. That starch is what keeps your microbiome healthy and happy. That protects you. Okay, you can't have a healthy immune system if you have an unhealthy gut. We now know that. We can do long lectures on that subject. You need to have a healthy gut microbiome. They are intimately interconnected with the functioning of your immune system. So what else? You need to do all the things that we've talked about. Go back and look at the earlier Instagrams. I want you to make sure you get adequate sleep. Get exercise. I talked about that just this past week. Exercise increases nitric oxide production. It also does amazing things for your gut microbiome, and having a healthy musculoskeletal system, having strong muscles helps maintain healthy glucose signaling in the body. This is not a little thing. This is huge. So you need to maintain strong muscles, bones. Bones are an endocrine organ. They make a hormone that helps regulate glucose regulation and function, and also cognitive function and mood. How's that? Did you know that bone does all that? So we need to maintain all the systems in our body. And what about the immune system? In order to have a healthy immune system, you need to have proper hormones. So what are some of the things that I haven't even mentioned that can interfere with proper hormone production? Cannabis. Okay, now marijuana is legal in most states, and you may think, I'm really stressed, I'm going to smoke marijuana. Don't do it. Okay, number one, the smoke from marijuana inhalation is really bad for your lungs. I'm going to do a whole separate talk just on cannabis, because there's good, but there's also bad. You need to understand it. But also, I want you to know, most people don't know this, that marijuana, THC, actually lowers the production of testosterone and estrogen. So in males, they'll have less testosterone. In females, they'll have less estrogen production. It interferes with fertility. It interferes with the menstrual cycle. Don't do it. Okay, there are many other stress reducers. I've covered a lot of them. Guided imagery, walking meditation, using essential oils we touched on, taking a bath, doing whatever you need to do, watching funny movies. You have to find the solution. Talking to your friends, writing letters, doing gratitude journals. But smoking marijuana, that is not allowed in my book. Okay, so I need you to know that. You have to have a healthy underlying physiology in your body if you're going to get through this. What is the mortality of people who end up on ventilators? You keep hearing, we need more ventilators, we need more ventilators. Ventilators are saving only a small percentage of people who end up on them. Some people, I know, they say, I don't care what you do, don't put me on a ventilator. There's now data that we may be using the ventilators incorrectly. This condition is really evolving in our knowledge on a very, very rapid rate. So what have we learned? People can have incredibly low oxygen levels when we measure them. With a pulse oximeter, we measure the oxygen, and they're getting levels that are ridiculously low. They're considered in the past incompatible with being alert. And yet these people are having conversations. And so we don't know what to do. This is where the critical care doctors are working on this, trying to figure out, because they were putting people on ventilators solely based on oxygenation. That's how they were trained, because that's what's been the standard of care for other problems involving pulmonary issues. So they would take people when their oxygenation was dropping below a certain point. They would automatically sedate them and put them on ventilators. It turns out the high pressures from these ventilator settings are causing harm to the lungs, and this is not working in the vast majority of cases. The mortality rate of people who go on ventilators varies from place to place and so on, but it's in the neighborhood of like 80%. So 80% of people put on a ventilator stay on them for a few weeks often and then die. So even though we may have more ventilators coming out, that's not something I want in my future. Now, just as a note, there are some other interesting things. There's a company and they've been making these for a long time. They're like hyperbaric oxygen chambers that are put over the head, like helmets. And these seem to be amazing. They can't turn them out fast enough. Apparently, they just got an order from one foreign country, I don't know which one, for 20,000. It's a little family business. Why aren't we having other companies getting involved? If it's a patent, fine, give them the money for the patent use. But why can't we, as a country, use our ingenuity, our manufacturing capability to make more of these hyperbaric oxygen helmets? That seems to be a far better solution. But of course, like I said, this situation is evolving almost on a daily, even hourly basis. Our understanding and our confusion are all growing in proportion to the information that we're getting. I wish that it were clearer. That's why I'm going to keep doing updates so that you will understand as much as we know about this condition. Now, there are several sites that are doing experiments with remdesivir. That's the antiviral that was actually approved for Ebola. But then the Ebola, fortunately, because that has a mortality rate of 90%. Fortunately, the Ebola epidemic died down. So it never really got used, remdesivir. Now they're pulling out and they're trying it. And I can tell you that a study just published in the New England Journal of Medicine showed that when they were using this antiviral, by the way, on people who were already in very bad shape, most of them were either on a great deal of oxygen, quite a few of them were already on ventilators, but they had close to a 70% improvement rate. So, and these were already late stage. Most of these people, they were obviously in the hospital, they were not doing very well. Some of them were close to death. And they still had a very significant improvement. People did better on it. So maybe the solution will be to give it earlier. Anytime you try to salvage people who are on the edge of dying, you're going to have a lower success rate. That's the whole fundamental principles of functional integrative medicine, is to be proactive, right? We don't want to be chasing our tails, always trying to chase the problem and trying to deal with end stage disease. We want to understand the processes, the root cause, and then deal with that to prevent those late stage problems from developing. So perhaps using this antiviral at a much earlier stage in the disease will be much more beneficial. Now let's talk about update on hydroxychloroquine. So right now it's available, it's a legal drug, and if you watch the news, you'll see plus and minuses being talked about. There are a lot of doctors coming out and saying, oh my gosh, this drug can kill you. You can have a cardiac event and then you will die. Now, I can tell you that I have many patients in my practice, women who are postmenopausal with rheumatoid arthritis, younger women with lupus, many patients who are on the drug called Plaquenil. That's the brand name for hydroxychloroquine. I have never seen a problem with any of them from a cardiovascular point of view. I've talked to other rheumatologists who prescribe it very robustly for this patient population. They also have not seen a problem. Granted, it has this issue with prolonged, what's called QT interval, prolonged QT interval, that can affect the heart. I'm not denying that. It's absolutely true. And the antibiotic, thromycin, often prescribed as a Z-Pak, that also has an impact on people who have prolonged QT interval. And if you give both drugs together, then there's potential for interaction and increasing the risk. So, obviously there has to be caution exercised. But what if someone who already is known to have a high risk, like they're older, 65 plus, they do have diabetes, they do have hypertension, they do have a history of an MI and such kinds of conditions, or cancer. My goodness, I think that we need to seriously think about giving this medication early. I have heard that in New York, there are some hospitals that are very liberal in their use of hydroxychloroquine, and some of them are also using the Z-Pak with it. And they are getting good outcomes, but only if used early, within of the first week or maybe a little bit beyond that. So early use of this drug is probably where it's at. If it's used late stage, someone who was already on a ventilator, high amounts of oxygen, about to go on a ventilator, having major problems, like going into the cytokine storm, it probably is too late. But that's true for many things. If you're dealing with something at the end of the road, certain therapies may be far less or not even effective at all. So we need to recognize this. So I don't feel negative about hydroxychloroquine. I know a lot of the data now is still anecdotal, but I think that we need to consider this for physicians or if you're a patient, especially if you have a high risk, something like we just talked about, to maybe consider this. If you wait till the end and you're already really ill, that's a problem. If you can get on a study with remdesivir, great. But to do nothing, the standard of care has still been go home, maybe get tested, maybe not. By the way, I'm going to talk about some updates on testing too. But what happens? You just go home and you wait and you wait. And when you can't breathe, then you go to the hospital. That is not the foundation of functional and integrative medicine, that you just go home and just wait. That is not what we want to do. So even if you are waiting, even if you don't go on any of these new or experimental medications for this condition, the very least you can do is up your antioxidant intake. Think about having bone broth. Chicken soup, that old Jewish remedy? Well, actually, folklore, yes. Reality, also yes. The bone broth that you get from making chicken soup, when you have all of these materials, the collagen and so on, coming out of the bone marrow into the broth, has actually been found to be healthful. It helps nourish the gut microbiome, and the fluid, the hydration. So go have big bowls of chicken soup. In addition, talk to your own physician, or if you're my patient, talk to me about the utility, the potential benefits of taking some antioxidants like lipoic acid and vitamin C, and then having zinc on board, B complex, magnesium, vitamin D. Did I mention that one? So all of the potent antioxidants, vitamin A. So consider this. Talk to your doctor. Talk to someone who is familiar with antioxidant use, and make sure you have someone who's watching you when you're home. If you get infected, don't just sit at home and do nothing. That is not being proactive. That is not the integrative functional medicine approach. We want to always be taking the active approach to help support your immune system, your gut, your emotions, everything. And I didn't mention this, and I'm going to talk more about it in the future, about some of the newest information on melatonin. So I am recommending melatonin, generally speaking, for patients who get infected, and also a small amounts ahead of time. But we'll talk more about that. I think that deserves another whole conversation. So at the very least, don't do nothing. See, call your doctor. See about if you now can qualify for getting tested, and see if you can qualify for getting on a study, or if you are an appropriate candidate for any of the current therapeutic regimens. Talking about other therapeutic regimens, they are now in my area doing a study where they are using the serum to get antibodies from convalescent serum of people who've had the COVID-19 infection and have recovered. So the data on that is still preliminary, but there is some benefit, it seems, to using the convalescent serum to get the antibodies from someone who's already been infected and recovered, and get them into someone who is now actually undergoing an active infection. So that's another area that is looking fairly promising, and I hope that will really blossom and be very, very effective for certain very specific patients. So things that are now in flux: the use of hydroxychloroquine plus minus Z-Pak, remdesivir, studies going on all over the world, serum from convalescent patients looking to give antibodies. So those are some of the main things. Now, what about some other even more out there kinds of things? New data on nitric oxide. So I'm going to do another whole program just on nitric oxide. You need to understand. It took me a while to understand it myself. But just so that you know, nitric oxide has 3 different forms. I'm not going to get into it for this show, but 2 of the forms that are called neuronal and endothelial are very critical to maintaining health of the vessels, the healthy blood vessels, so they don't become highly inflamed and constricted, and also maintaining healthy gut, healthy heart, healthy brain. All of those are very involved with nitric oxide. So there's actually now been some thought about using the phosphodiesterase inhibitors. What are they? Viagra, Cialis. They actually increase the body's production of nitric oxide, and there may be some benefit to that. Also, they have used inhaled nitric oxide. That's been a therapy for people with pneumonia for a very long time, but it's very brief. When you get it inhaled, it's a very short lasting gas. That's what nitric oxide is. Like I said, we'll talk about it more in the future. But think how interesting that is, that a drug like Viagra or Cialis may actually have value in treating COVID-19. So that's another really interesting new piece of information. Another thing I want to tell you about is methylene blue. So methylene blue has been around for a long time. It's actually used to decontaminate, to kill out all viruses in blood so that you can actually create. Do you ever wonder, like, how do you create convalescent plasma for the immunoglobulins to give to someone who's to someone who's now suffering with a COVID-19 infection, from someone who's recovered? What do they do with the blood? Do they just give it to people, just take out the serum? That would be unsafe. There could be other viruses, and that virus may still even be in the person. We don't know. So they actually sterilize the blood using methylene blue and light. The light activates the methylene blue, and it kills. It kills all the viruses. They've used it to test for killing HIV and influenza, West Nile virus, and it looks like it would probably kill the coronavirus. So that's how they can use it to create this serum. Now, what about using it in humans? It has been used. Dental experts have looked at it as a mouthwash for helping with gum health, to kill out, hostile bacteria, for example, in the mouth. It actually has research for cognitive health. So we are working on with a small group, and we're looking at the potential for nitric oxide to be produced in the mouth and to kill off as well, to kill off the coronavirus in the mouth where there are often very high numbers, and using methylene blue. And so stand by, we're going to get back to you as we develop this and as we get more data. So that's also a new interesting thing on the horizon, is using light activated methylene blue. So we'll see. We're trying to be creative, innovative, looking at things that have been useful in the past and how we can then apply them to the current situation. So what I want to emphasize again is that we have no cure, we have no prevention. What we do know is people who are innately healthy do far better. People who have underlying medical problems are the vast majority of the ones who are dying. And I think the ones who die and they say they couldn't find anything wrong with them or they had no history, I think it's because nobody tested, because nobody really knew what was going on in that person's body, and therefore they had no label. But I think if you really knew everything about every person who actually died of COVID-19, you would find something in each person's history. So, but I just want you to do everything you can to stay optimally healthy so that if you get infected, you will do well. You'll be that person who has virtually no effect, no symptoms, just sail right through this thing. It was not even as bad as a cold. That's what I want for all of you. Now, just a quick word about testing. So testing now is more available. Some of the hospitals, like in my area, they have now rapid response of testing. They can get the results back in a couple of hours. We don't have you get it back in 15 minutes, but in a couple of hours instead of a few days. But the supply is limited. So it's not everyone can come and get tested, not even by a long shot. As well, they're now finding very high rates of false negatives. That means you do the test, it comes back negative, but you really have it. This is not helpful. Part of the reason is that the tests are typically done by sticking a very small swab way, 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 way back into the nasopharynx, way back. Like people have described it as like you're stabbing the brain. You're getting so far back Well, that's really uncomfortable. So the doctors who are doing it, or they're not doctors, often they're nurses or lab techs, they're not getting far enough back. So they're not actually testing the right area. As well, patients hate it. They want to get tested, but it's so uncomfortable they pull back. And so it never really gets deep enough. So there are people that clearly have it in every regard, or ultimately the test does come back positive, and it should have been positive in the first place, but it's negative. So the understanding now, if it looks, smells, sounds, everything like COVID 19, it is COVID 19. We just have to do that assumption. So we need a better test. We need to be able to test maybe the mouth. And there's been talk about that because a lot of viral particles will be in the mouth because this deep, deep, deep nasopharyngeal swab is not working out that well. In China, they said the false negative rate was around 30%, and they're saying it's higher in the US. Maybe we're just wimpier, maybe we don't do as good a job. You know, the drive-bys where people are driving in and they're in their car and somebody comes in, that's probably not, I mean, it's what we do, but it's probably not actually the optimal way because people are sticking their arms and they're trying to keep their distance and they're not probably getting up far enough back into the nasopharynx. So be aware, a lot of false negatives. Now, in terms of antibodies to see if you're perhaps one of the people who had the infection and it was asymptomatic, that is coming. It's coming pretty soon. What I'm concerned about is right now, if somebody's offering the test, it may give you false positives. And that's kind of scary. So for testing, if you have it, the false negatives are a problem. For testing to see if you've recovered from it, the false positives are a problem because coronaviruses are what is causing the common cold. It's just a different species of the coronavirus. So sometimes when you do antibodies, they cross-react. So my concern is that you're going to get a cross-reaction with a different coronavirus from their particles and so on, and the antibodies that were made to them. So you can get antibodies, but it's really to a different coronavirus, and it will be read as if you're immune, and then you think you are immune, but you're not immune, and then you think you could not practice social distancing, you can get away with whatever you want, and it turns out, no, you didn't have it. Now, the other thing is we don't really know about long-lasting protection from antibodies. Are you really immune forever? We don't know that. So there's a lot more data we need to know even about that. But there will be antibody testing coming soon. But right now I'm holding off. I'm not offering it. I get emails all the time, companies trying to sell me some kits. I don't know if they're reliable. So I'm waiting because a false positive is not useful. It can actually kill people. They think they're immune, they've had it, and they're not. So stand by on that one. So I really want you to be updated. I want you to be aware. The major take home is that you need to have someone you can work with. Now, if you want to work with me, totally optional, I am available for telemedicine calls. My office number is 949-753-7475, or you can email my office at email@integrativemgi.com, and I'm happy to try to work with you, give you general advice, and tell you when you need to have more intensive care, if you should go to a hospital or a walk-in clinic, if you need to have in-person care. I just want everyone to have someone, a healthcare professional that you can work with so you have some guidance if you don't know if you have the infection, should you get testing, where to go, how to arrange for it. Someone has to be there for you. So check with your own doctor, see what that doctor is up to. If you can't find anyone, I am available. My office is open every day, Monday through Friday. We have regular work hours. I'm doing telemedicine calls all day long. I wish I could see people in person. That takes a lot for me to bring someone into my office now because I don't have adequate protective gear and I would not want to expose anyone. As far as I know, I don't have it, but remember, we don't know when we are asymptomatic. So I never want to take a chance of infecting anyone, and it's hard when you're in a room with someone doing an exam to keep that 6-foot distance. So we're really trying to convert everyone for right now to telemedicine because it's safer. So thank you for joining me on a Saturday, or perhaps it's a different day if you're looking at this on YouTube. I will be back next week twice, on Tuesday and Friday. The times will be posted on my Instagram. It's not always the same time. You may wonder why that is. That's because I'm a working doctor. Sometimes I have to see patients. In fact, I'm always seeing patients with FaceTime, Zoom, Skype. So my primary mission is to take care of my patients and help them and their families. Second is to spend time with you on Instagram. So looking forward to next time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe and act smart. See you soon.